name's Chris Martinez. This is my pop side notebook, or notes. So just want to get into it. First off, just some things to know. If you know me, I'm a big Texans fan, big Texans guy. Love the Texans. First game I went to was 2012. Against the Ravens. I will always remember that game. That was my first game. I haven't, missed one since then. Second, football. I've been playing football for 11 years now, and I loved every single year of it. And I hope it's still a part of my life in the near future, hopefully. So that'd be amazing. The Diamond Heart Club and Clover, Spade and Clover. Again, big thing you know about me, I dabble in gambling a little bit. Things like poker and blackjack, I enjoy. A&M, that's where I want to go to college. Big fan of A&M, all their sports. Big football guy, big football guy. I go to the games too. If there's an A&M game, I'm probably gonna be watching the whole day. That's just one thing to know. Golf. This is supposed to be a thing like that. I love golf. It's probably my favorite sport other than football. If I wasn't playing football, I'd be playing golf, probably all the time. And yeah, money. I work. I like to spend money. I like to make money. So, I like to put money on there. And of course, my favorite little subject, comm sci. I put a computer in a beaker with like little bubbles coming out the top. That's science, computers. Yeah. So now I just want to go into table of contents. Table of contents, kind of what we went through in class, is the authors page, table of contents, getting started, fills, borders, colors, gradients, opacity, ovals, circles, lines, regular polygons, and stars. And that's just how it looks like through that. And the second page is blank, so I can fill it up even more with whatever we want. Alright, so just with the getting started page. We learned about bugs here. We learned about syntax errors, runtime errors. We learned about logical errors, and basically just all the distinctions between those. How syntax errors are just Python errors. How runtime errors are just like it'll run but it'll crash once you try to run it. And logical errors are just words like it'll run and it won't crash, but it's just like things that you didn't really mean to do. So like accidentally putting something as a color when you want it to be like salmon, not teal. The console is basically just like the white. It's just the thing that's going to show you errors. It's on the bottom right, and also there's like a checklist which is going to tell you what you need to do and like what's kind of wrong with it. And it'll like check codes, tell you like what's kind of like wrong, tell you the error that you have, and also the solution. There's a solution. It's at the top right. It's going to tell you, it's going to give you a green check if you're right. The canvas, big important thing. Basically, it's just a white box that's made with pixels. At the top left is 0 by 0, bottom right is 400 by 400. And it's basically just a 400 by 400 box that all of like that aftermath of your code is going to be put in there. When the X increases, it's going to go to the right. When the Y increases, it's going to go down. And kind of just to find the difference between them all. If you do Y2 minus Y1, that's going to give you the Y difference, and X2 minus X1 is going to give you the X difference. On this page. Show you. Then we went into rectangles, rectangles, things like that. First thing we learned was the rectangles. Basically, rectangles is the first thing that you learn by drawing a rectangle. There's 4 numbers in a rectangle that you need to know. The first number is the left edge, X. Second number is going to be the Y. Third number is the width. Fourth number is the height. To correctly draw this, you need to have a capital R. If you need a capital R when you're doing this, no matter what. And kind of like a way to draw, for example, is I need a capital R. Sorry about that. Capital R, ECT. That's the thing that you need to know for rectangle. Then you need to put a parentheses, then your 4 numbers with commas in between all of them, and then you put a parenthesis at the end, and that'll give you a black square, because the basic color for fill is black. Errors when drawing, if you don't have commas, parentheses, if you don't put a capital R, it's going to be a syntax error, and kind of what happens. Fills and borders. So kind of the cool things I like about these is that fills are basically just the color that you're going to put inside. So the correct way to draw it's just fill equals and then like a dash and then the color that you want, then another dash and then a parenthesis to end it. So if you want to make your rectangle green, you do your 4 numbers with the commas, and you put a comma, fill equals quote green quote parenthesis, and then it'll be good. So basically a fill, the basic color for fill is black, and you need to put quotes around the color name or else it won't work. Next, borders. So borders, you have border color and border width. Border colors, same thing, kind of the same, something similar to fills. You need quotes around the color for it to work. Border width, if you want to put the border width, you need something called a camel case, which means you need to put a capital letter here I'll show you. You put capital letter after border width, you need to put together, and you put a capital letter there. And all you need to do is just put the number, and you don't need quotes. Dashes are basically just borders with spaces in between. It's about 2 pixels. If you want the dashes to be, spaced out, you can put like 2 numbers, X, Y, and it'll be more spaced out, which is just the dash width and the gap width. And sorry, I can go by dashes. Now, colors and gradients is kind of my cooler part about what we learned in the first subject. So there's 143 named colors, and RGB, for example, stands for red, green, and blue, which is hex number for red, green, and blue, for example. 16 million hexes that you can use. There's a lot. And if you want to be able to fill with a custom hex, you need to be able to use fill equals RGB, parentheses, number, or it's parentheses, number, comma, number, parentheses, and another parentheses at the end, if that's done. Then you have a radical gradient, which is fill equals gradient, comma, and then you put your colors. When you're putting your colors, you have to remember to still put the quotes, because if you want to put a color, you have to put quotes. That's just how it works. And a minimum for gradients is you need 2 colors. Linear gradient basically is the gradient where if you want the gradient to start somewhere else, like if you want it to start left, right, bottom, top, you'll specify that in a linear gradient. So you start the same as a radical gradient, except that at the end you'll put comma, start equals, and then wherever you want it to go, then you need 2 quotes. And then And then we went into opacity. So opacity is like kind of the opposite of transparency. So opacity is basically like if you have a higher opacity, it'll be less transparent. If you have a lower opacity, it'll be a higher transparent. So opacity of 100 is like the largest. Opacity of 0 is fully transparent. Default opacity is 100. And if you want a certain shape to be to have a certain opacity, you have to put it in that function. So if it's a rectangle, put X, comma, Y, comma, width, comma, length, comma, if you want to put a color, fill equals, quote, color, quote, comma, opacity equals number, parentheses. And that will give you your word color. Don't worry about the things that's squared. I'm going to put on the other page. So kind of just look at that first, opacity. Now, where you start getting more advanced, ovals, circles, and lines. So, ovals, also called ellipses, use center instead of like left top, which still uses width and height. So, the correct way to draw or to code an oval is you need capital O, vol, parentheses, sorry about that, center X, center Y, and width, height. So you need a width and height to kind of, still give it that shape, and then the center X, center Y is where the point's going to be right in the spank middle of that oval. The length of the oval is going to start from the bottom. Circles. So circles are kind of similar to ovals, except that you don't need a width or height. It's just center X, center Y, and radius, because a circle is even around all sides. Now, like we talked about before, if you want to put, you can put fills, gradients, things like that, colors, border widths, borders, dashes, all that in the circle still, and it'll still work. Now going off the circles, the leftmost point of the circle, if you want to find it, it's going to be center x minus radius. Rightmost point is going to be center x plus radius. Topmost point is going to be center y minus radius. Bottommost point is going to be y plus radius. The circle width is just going to be radius times 2, which is the diameter. Now for lines, lines run from a point, which it's going to start from the bottom. It's going to go to a point, x1, y1, y2, or x1, y1, x2, y2. That's kind of how it's going to run. And then in that, you're allowed to put same thing, fills, colors, dashes, things like that. So I'm going to put here. And then lastly, polygons, regular polygons and stars. So regular polygons are used to like draw polygons, hexagons, things like that. So kind of similar to the circle, center x, center y, and radius, except this time, so you have an extra one called sides. So the sides is basically the number of points you're going to have on that regular polygon, which is going to be symmetrical, by the way. For stars, it's going to be kind of similar to, basically the exact same as a polygon, except that this time it's center x, center y, radius, sides, but it's going to be angled at a different way. So a star is going to be pointy, a regular polygon is going to be more round. Kind of the best distinction between the two. If you have a lower number of sides, or a lower number, it's going to be a pointier star. If you have a higher number, it's going to be a bigger star. So your radius, if you have a big radius, it's going to be a thicker star. If you have a smaller radius, it's going to be a lot more pointy star. Polygons. Polygons are going to be those shapes that are like kind of like uneven. So it's basically going to take all the points that you put down and try and connect them and make it into like that shape. So you can make many different weird looking shapes with polygons. So it's legit just listed as just points. So x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y2, etc., etc., etc. It's an unsymmetrical shape. Lastly, the big thing you need to know is labels. So labels is simple to kind of like put down. So basically, all you need to put for a label is label, parentheses, and then in quotations, the text that you want to put. And then after the quotations, just X and Y, which is going to be right in the middle where you put it. So if you want label to draw text, it takes 3 arguments. So for example, like the size, you can change the size. You can also make italics true, which is going to make it slanted. And there's also different font names. And the fonts are Arial, Monospace, Caveat, Cinzel, Monosterit, Grenzel, Sacramento, and Orbitron. Which, all that listed on here. Thank you so much, Ms. Matthews, for teaching us all this great stuff. And honestly, hopefully, we can continue on doing all this cool stuff. And I will be using all this in our next unit. Hopefully our next notebook check is going to be nice and good as well. So thank you so much.